Assalamualaikum and good afternoon to Datin Freida binti Abu Bakar, Timbalan Pengarah Sektor Pembelajaran Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri Selangor, Puan Jahanisah binti Muhammad Yusof, KPPK Bahasa Sektor Pembelajaran, Cik Zahirah binti Zulkifli, Penolong Pengarah Bahasa Sektor Pembelajaran, State Language Officers, SIC Plus from all districts of Selangor, our panel of presenters and all our viewers. Welcome to our webinar session entitled Year 5 Curriculum Induction, Ironing Out the Creases Part 1. It is organized by the English Language Unit, Selangor State Education Department. I'm Syarifah Nazurah binti Abdul Khalib from SK Batu Belah, and I will be your moderator today. And thank you everyone for making the time to join us today. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, allow me to first share with all of you a little bit of this webinar and the objectives of this webinar. This webinar has two parts. Today, it will be part 1, and we will be discussing more on introduction to CFR, differentiated instructions, formative assessment, listening skills, and also speaking skills. For our part 2 tomorrow, we will be talking about reading skills, writing skills, grammar, language arts, language awareness, and project-based learning. And the objectives for our webinar are, first is to have an overview of the Year 5 English language curriculum. Whether it is CFR aligned, and it is to identify the curriculum documentation, which is the DSKP, SOW, syllabus, textbook, and explore the purpose of each document, and also to have an overview of the lessons in SOW according to the skills and language arts. Overall, this webinar will be packed with information regarding this new Year 5 English curriculum. And before we start, let me lay out a few housekeeping matters. First, the attendance link will be shared approximately 15 minutes before the end of today's webinar, so don't look out for that. And second, we would love to hear from you during today's presentation. So if you have any questions for our presenters, please feel free to send it through the chat box, and the presenter will be answering each question after they have presented. Or maybe we can pilot everything and answer it during the Q&A session at the end of this webinar. And lastly, we would encourage you to like, subscribe, and share to this webinar in your social network. There are a lot of info that you can get from all of the speakers, as all of them are very well trained in this area. So without further ado, let's move on to the first presenter for today. So with us today is Miss Lim Hong Wei. She is a master trainer for CFR with 13 years of experience in teaching. And currently, she is a teacher at SJKC Chung. So today, she will talk about introduction on CFR and curriculum-related documentation. So over to you, Ms. Lim.
Thank you, Syarifah. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, first of all, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to the State Education Department for inviting us to do a sharing on Year 5 curriculum induction. Okay, it is just a refresher course. Okay, I hope this will help the new English teachers as well as recapping what we know about CFR and what we can do in our teaching and learning process. All right, so without further ado, all right, let's start. Now, as we all know, CFR is an international standard for describing language ability at 6 levels, with A1 being the lowest level and C2 as the highest. Now, it uses can-do statements to describe learners' language ability. Now, this framework covers the 4 core skills. What are the 4 core skills here? The listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and the language elements within these skills. What are they? Grammar and the vocabulary. Now, for each level, CEFR actually describes in depth the language knowledge, the skills, and the competencies necessary for effective communication. Now, the competencies that I mentioned here is about the communicative competencies. In other words, referring to the ability of a learner to understand and to use the language effectively. Now, to communicate in an authentic social and school environment as well, okay? We all know that CEFR prioritize communication as the aim of the language learning, and this is done through various language activities. Now, let us look at the global skills, okay? I believe that most of the teachers have been trained all these years, starting from 2016, okay? Those who were with us during familiarization of CFR, okay? So you were with us from 2016, and I'm sure you are quite familiar with the global skills. Now, for primary school teachers, normally we focus on the A1 and A2 level. Now, at this point, the learners just need to know how to interact in a simple way by asking and answering simple questions about themselves, about their friends, and to communicate in a very slow rate of speech. Now, as for A2 level, this is moving towards upper level a little bit. And this part has the majority of the descriptors for stating social functions. Okay, for example, using everyday polite forms of greeting and address, greet people, okay, how they greet people, how they are, okay, how they are reacting to news, how they handle very short social exchanges, okay, ask and answer questions about what they do at work and in free time, make and respond to invitations and things like that. Now, we just need to focus on these two levels for primary schools, as the Ministry of Education already set the target, the curriculum target for us, okay, and the maximum is until A2 level. Now, of course, we have the pre-A1 level, okay, which has been catered specifically for the preschool, and for the year one, we have the working towards A1 level. All right, okay. Now, what's the link between the new curriculum and the CEFR? Now, this is a sample for the speaking skill. As you can see, for CEFR descriptor here, all right, these descriptors, as I mentioned earlier, a learner can make, and for example, a learner can make an introduction and use basic greeting and leave-taking expressions. All right, so when we are taking the descriptors, okay, and make it into our learning standards, which you can find in our SOW, all right, learning standards. For primary year 2, for example, okay, for primary year 2, we label it as 2.3.1, and the standard states that the learners are able to introduce self and others to an audience using fixed phrases. All right, now, so as you can see here, introduce self and others to an audience actually refers to the descriptor making an introduction, all right? And the fixed phrases here, okay, refers to the using basic greeting and leave-taking expressions. Now, same things when we apply this particular learning standard into our own classroom. As you can see, all right, okay, we can refer to the SOW lesson 102, okay, unit 8. The learners have to first introduce themselves to the class and then put on the mask. They become the animal, and in pairs, they have a short dialogue asking each other about themselves and what they can do, right? Okay, as you can see, our learning standard is aligned with the CEFR descriptor, and our lesson is being highlighted in the SOW, okay, which is scheme of work. Now, it is all aligned with the learning standard, which is linked to the CEFR as well. Now, this is how we conduct the CEFR aligned lesson. But we don't have to worry too much, okay, because all the documents are prepared for us, and how, okay, to carry out the lessons have been designed properly, okay, and so that we know what to do, okay. What we need to do is to adapt and adopt, okay, accordingly. All right. Now, let's have a look at the curriculum-related documentations. Now, as teachers, we have to be aware that we are provided with all these working materials by the BBK. Now, these are all CEFR-aligned curriculum documents. As we know, the first one is the DSKP, which is very important for us, especially when we need to assess the language ability. So this is the document that we must refer to, okay, whenever we want to assess in terms of the formative assessments or the classroom-based assessment. All right, okay. Now, so the first one, okay, so DSKP, we all know that this is very important for us to bring along, for us to refer when we want to do some assessments, okay, or classroom-based assessment. Now, we have to depend on these documents in order to give a very justifiable and objective kind of assessment, okay. As for the syllabus, it is a document for us to know the scope of the knowledge, okay, the content itself. We should be aware that within which year, what kind of themes that we need to cover, what kind of language focus that we will be covering, as well as what kind of vocabulary and sentence structure that we have to focus on. Now, for scheme of work, okay, SOW, all right. Now, it's a year-by-year teaching manual for us. Well, we are lucky to have, okay, scheme of work as our guide, okay, as our guide to follow, to adapt, and to adopt according to our school and pupils' background in order to implement the CFR-aligned lessons. And of course, okay, we are provided with the teacher's book. I find this very useful, okay, because the teacher's book are provided to us, and then the audio files as well as the worksheets related to teaching resources. And finally, not forgetting the curriculum framework. Okay, you can find this curriculum framework in all your documents. Okay, all right. So this curriculum framework, the primary curriculum framework, is for year 1 to year 6, as you can see. Okay, it's stated here from year 1 to year 6. Now, this document is for us to be able to see the coherence of all the learning standards from year 1 all the way to year 6. As we can see here for year 1, okay, in the listening skill, learners are to understand with support the main idea of very simple phrases and sentences. As for year 6, okay, all right, by year 6, they are required to understand with little or no support the main idea of longer, simple text on a range of familiar topics. You can see a gradual changes here in terms of the difficulty, and it allows progression, okay, from year 1 to year 6. Right, let's look at the DSKP. Now, we have to be aware that this document is very important in order for the teachers to fully understand the performance standards. All right. So based on these performance standards, okay, it expresses the degree or quality of proficiency that pupils are expected to display in relation to the content and learning standards. When we carry out our assessment, especially during when we carry out formative assessment or any classroom-based assessment, we don't assess our kids based on our own interpretation, right? Okay, we don't assess them based on our own assumptions of the level, okay? We have to refer to the documents because it's a standardized document and everything is very objective, clear, and concise, all right? Now, let's have a look at the curriculum target levels based on the CEFR. Now we are here, okay? We are still at the primary level. Now for each different year, for primary level, the Ministry of Education already set the curriculum target for us, which is A1 and A2. So for year 1, it is working towards A1. For year 2 to year 4, they are focusing on A1 level, but it is divided into A1 low for year 2, A1 mid for year 3, and A1 high for year 4. Now, when learners move to year 5, they will move to A2 level. Again, A2 low for year 5, A2 mid for year 6. It is not A2 high yet, as you can see. Okay, when do they reach A2 high? It's in when they are in secondary school, okay, secondary level from 2. All right, so for primary level, we reached A2. So our target here is A2 mid. So at the end of year 6, they will be able to achieve A2 mid, at least A2 mid. All right, now let us look at the general performance standard guide for year 1 and year 3. Okay, year 1 to year 3. Now, you can find this in your DSKP, all right? Now, because they are considered as A1 users for year 1 to year 3, okay? Year 1 is working towards A1, right? Now, DSKP has been mentioned clearly over here that we give pupils level 1 if they hardly achieve the curriculum target, even with a lot of support. You will see this for in DSKP year 1 to year 3, okay? Now, on level 2, when they move to level 2, we give them level 2, all right? Performance level 2, when the pupils are on track to achieve the curriculum target. And for level 3, they achieve expectations of the curriculum target that is set for that particular year. Now, for year 4, all right, now for year 4, it's slightly different for level 1. As you can see, it's stated here that, okay, the pupils display minimal ability to achieve the curriculum target. All right, when it comes to year 5, same thing as well, all right? So we give them level 1 when they display minimal ability to achieve the curriculum target. Now, in DSKP, okay, we are not only being provided with the performance standards, we can also see the kinds of specific standards that we need to focus on. For example, in listening skill 1.1, to recognize and reproduce target language sounds. All right, so the focus will be recognizing and reproducing target language foldings intelligibly. All right, so we know that when we want to assess them, okay, we can refer to this document, because in this document we are able to see clearly, all right, what we need to focus on. Now, when it comes to the focus here, all right, and it comes with the learning standard, which is 1.1, let's say 1.1.1, okay? In this document itself, we can see what kind of focus we need to pay attention to and when we need to observe or assess that specific learning or content standard, okay? So we don't make assumptions based on our interpretation, okay? We have to follow the documents available for us, right? Now, let's have a look at the scheme of work. All right, now as we are aware of, for SK and SJK, okay, these two SJKT, SJKC, and SK schools, we share the same type of textbooks. All right, now for year 1 and 2, we all know for year 1 and year 2, we have the Superminds, and then for year 3, we have Get Smart Plus 3. For year 4, we have Get Smart Plus 4. Okay, and this year we have English Plus 1, all right, okay, as our textbook. Okay, we use the same textbook. However, as for scheme of work, we have 2 different versions. One for SK and one for SJK, because we have different time allocation for different types of school. Now for SJK, we have 6 periods in a week, right? Okay, it's lesser than the SK schools. Now, as we can see here, SJK, all right, now SJKC only has, SJK schools only has 81 lessons. That's the last lesson for year 1, for example. And as for the SK, there are 160 lessons, okay? It's almost double, all right? Now, it doesn't mean that we don't teach the kids the skill, okay? All the skills in SJK, Okay, now it's just that because of due to time allocation, okay, the difference in the time allocation, some of the skills are not repeated. Okay, that means the lessons are cut short, and therefore some of the skills would not be repeated for SJK schools. But for SKs, okay, you will notice they have more time to repeat some of the skills. Now, another sample is the year 5. Okay, this year. Year 5 SOW, year 5 scheme of work. Now, SJK only has 96 lessons. Now, this is the last lesson, unit 8. Okay, this is the last lesson. Now, the final lesson is project 2. But as you can see, okay, it is also project 2 for SK, okay, for SK, but it is the 160th lesson. That means they have 160 lessons all together. All right, in short, we just need to remember that we have different sets of scheme of work and we have to follow it on what we need to cover. As I have mentioned, they are properly designed and published by the BPK to assist us in the teaching. All right, now, so I'm going to touch a little bit on English +1, as this is the CFR for primary 5 this year. Now, the lesson cycles are the same like the previous years. The listening, speaking, reading. We have listening skill, speaking skill, reading skills, writing skills, language arts, and also language awareness. We know that language awareness is carried out at the end of each unit, right? Okay, but for year 5, all right, for year 5, we have an addition. All right, we have an addition, which is the consolidations. All right, okay, so if you are aware, we have 2 consolidations for SJK and 16 consolidations for SK school. Now, as I have mentioned, we are provided with teacher's book as well. It contains the teaching notes, the background notes for certain topics, and then the cultural information and language notes, as well as the ideas of extra optional activities for fast finishers. Okay, so we will be talking about differentiation strategies later on, okay, by my teammate. All right, so I find them very useful because there are a lot of activities for us to carry out, okay, based on our classroom, okay, especially when we have mixed ability classes. We know that, okay, for fast finishers, what we can do for them. All right, and then you will see some suggested activities in the teacher's book as well. And with the help of scheme of work, okay, we will have, it will assist us in our teaching. That means we just need to adopt, okay, and adapt according to our classroom, regardless whether we are having lessons physically or online, right? Now, so the final one, okay, now, this is a clear view for SK and SJK, the lesson cycles between SK and SJK. So in short, for SK, the SOW, the scheme of work consists of 16 lessons in the starter unit, 18 lessons for the remaining units. Now for SJK, we know that for starters, we only have 8. Okay, 8 lessons. As for unit 1 to unit 8, we only have 11 lessons. Now, although both types of schools use the same textbook, okay, it is advisable for all the teachers to follow this document, all right, scheme of work, to follow this is like our Bible, you know, okay, to follow this document so that we cover all the content, so that we cover all the skills, all right, the 4 core skills, remember, all right, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So we are able to cover everything. The most importantly, we are able to find many suggested activities in the documents. We can also find a lot of pre-lesson suggested activities, post-lessons activities, and even how we can adapt, okay, our lesson using differentiation strategies. All right. So this is basically from my part, okay? So thank you, everyone. I will pass this back to our moderator, Syarifah. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Lim. So it was a very clear explanation. And as Ms. Lim said, that all documents have been prepared. So we only have to adopt and adapt. So before we move on to the next presenter, so don't forget to all the audience that you can actually type questions in the chat box and we will get back to you during the Q&A sessions. Okay, so let's move on to our second presenter. So I would like to invite Miss Freida Jihan binti Abdul Kadir, who is also a master trainer for CFR since 2016 with 13 years of experience in teaching, and currently she is teaching at Taman Sri Gombak, and she will be presenting on the formative assessment and differentiation strategies. So without further ado, over to you, Ms. Freida.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Syarifah, our lovely moderator. Now, as mentioned earlier, my name is Freida Jihan binti Abdul Kadir, and you can just call me Ms. Freida. So, let me just begin by saying how grateful I am to be here, to be invited as one of the speakers. With that, I must thank Cik Zahira, Ms. Zahira, and also Puan Haja Hanisa from the learning sector of Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri Selangor for having me. And also, I'm very excited to be sharing whatever knowledge that I have and share the information with my fellow teachers. Okay, I noticed that not just from Selangor, we have teachers from all across the country. So hello, Assalamualaikum, good evening everyone. Nice of you to join us today. Okay, so I'll be talking on what is formative assessment basically and the differentiated learning strategies. Okay, now we cannot have a refresher course on curriculum induction without having formative assessment as well as differentiation strategies in it, because it's part and parcel of the classroom teaching and learning practices, right? So I'm going to share my presentation, sorry. Okay. Okay, is it up? All right. Is it up? Can everybody see my presentation?
Can we get it in a full view, Ms. Freida?
Okay. I've done it.
Not yet. Maybe we can try one more time to make it a full view.
Okay, I'll try again, yeah. How is it now?
Still not in a full view.
Oh, okay.
Freida, try showing slideshow.
Yeah, I'm clicking
View.
slideshow now.
Yeah.
On the left one.
Okay, slideshow.
Sorry, again, Lim, could you help us, please?
All right, you can go to the first one from beginning.
Beginning. Okay.
It's not up yet. Okay, now try setup show.
Set up show. Where is it? Okay.
The fourth one. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, you can go full screen. Yes. Okay. Click OK. You're having this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you should be able to play. There's this play button at the right corner
Down.
below.
Bottom.
Down.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to close it and reshare it again, Ms. Freida?
Yes, I think.
It's still not working, yeah?
Oh, sorry, everyone.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay.
I thought we overcome this yesterday.
Never mind.
Okay, I'll
it's
share
okay.
again.
Yeah.
Maybe you should share your screen again.
Okay, while waiting, so the audience can actually put up questions in the comment section so that at the end of this webinar, we will have a Q&A session. So we will read your questions and we will get the presenters to answer your questions so that we can benefit from it. Just in case if you have anything to ask, you're not so sure what to ask. Okay, we're just going to wait for Miss Freida to join us again.
Can you hear?
All right, we have
right.
Miss
I
Freida
think,
here.
all right, I think we have
Okay.
Miss Freida again back here. Do you want to try to put up the slides, Miss Freida?
All right, we have Miss Freida here.
All right, we have Miss Freida again.
Yes. Sorry for that.
It's all right, no problem.
Sorry for that. It's all right, no problem. Okay. This is the thing with technology. You can prepare all the things in the world, but on the day.
Exactly. I agree on that.
You can prepare all the things in the world, but on the day. Okay.
Exactly. I agree on that.
Maybe my fellow colleagues can stand by for my presentation as well if something goes wrong. Maybe my fellow colleagues can stand by for my presentation as well if
Freida, do you have any other device near you? Because
There is
we
an
can hear
echo.
double. Yeah, there's an echo. Your sound. So can you try
Okay,
again? And
I've muted.
yeah,
Sorry
try
for
and
that.
talk again.
Miss Freida?
Hello, is it okay now?
Yeah, okay. Okay, we can hear you.
Is it okay? Okay. All right.
want to
How
put up
about my
try to
presentation?
put
Is
up
it
the
coming
slides?
up?
Not yet?
All right.
Freida, sorry. We have the presentation on the screen.
Yes.
Yeah. So Lim is going to present for you, so you
Oh,
can.
okay.
Oh, it's yours.
All right.
Uh,
Is it mine?
okay, you have your presentation?
Oh, yes, it is.
Okay.
There it is. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so back to you, Miss Freida.
Okay. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you, Ms. Syarifah. Okay, sorry for that, everyone. All right, alhamdulillah, we're back on. Okay, so what is formative assessment? So basically, formative assessment, according to CFR, is always referring back to William, and the latest one is William 2018. So what is it? Its assessment becomes formative assessment when teachers and pupils use evidence about pupils' learning to help them understand how pupils are developing and decide the next steps in learning. Okay, and these decisions are likely to be better than decisions that do not use that evidence. Okay, now in this quote, okay, I would like for everyone to look, oh, sorry, go back to that, please. Right, thank you. Okay, so in this quote, I would like everyone to look at the key points here, yeah? The key points is when it says, when teachers and pupils, okay? When teachers and pupils use evidence. So teachers and pupils. So formative assessment is not just, talking about teachers alone. It's about pupils, okay? Pupils are the owner of their own learning. So teachers must be sensitive in the sense that You don't just feel it's an obligation when you fill up the PBD form online twice a year. That's all. That's formative assessment. No. Okay, formative assessment is ongoing every day in the classroom practice, teaching and learning practices, right? So it is to help the pupils to understand how they can develop and how they can improve themselves. Okay, so decide the next steps in learning. And when making these decisions, of course, it is better to have decisions that use evidence rather than do not using evidence, right? So decisions that use evidence, for example, teachers, when we use our task sheets in the classroom, when we use our exercise books, okay, those are evidence. And don't be surprised if observation as well are considered as evidence. So our professional judgment as teachers in terms of giving observation, okay, monitoring. So we write it in our teachers' reflections. Those are also evidence. And even better if we have record perkembangan murid and things like that. So that is our evidence. Okay, next please. Thank you. Okay, now we cannot talk about formative assessments without talking about the key concepts, all right? So I would like for every teachers to look at the gears here. This is the diagram that represents formative assessment. Now each gear, okay, represented by teaching, formative assessment, and learning. All these three gears cannot work well without one another. So we need formative assessment in whatever teaching and learning process in the classroom. We need formative assessment to be happening. Okay, teachers. So actually, you know, we have been doing it. You know, it's just that probably we don't document them well. So now that CFR aligned syllabus is being introduced, and then the 21st century learning is coming in, and as well as PBD, you know, all those documents are substantiating what CFR aligned syllabus is all about. So we are not doing something new. We are just making it even more solid. Okay, teachers? So in explaining the key concepts, we have to bear in mind the three questions. Where are we going? Where is each pupil now? And how do we get there? Now, I'm going to talk about this slide a bit long, okay? So bear with me because I need for every teacher to understand why formative assessment is such an important thing, right? Okay, now, where are we going? So in this question, I would like for all of the teachers, all of us to ponder. It's sort of like having a destination, having an aim, right? Where to go, or where are we going? So what is our aim? What is our destination? So in a learning journey, of course, we have a destination, a learning destination, which is in the long run to achieve A2 by year 6, A2 level, right? But in the shorter run, in the classroom day by day itself, is to achieve the learning objectives, right? And then in the medium span, it's like to improve oneself. So that is how it is symbolized, okay? So where is each pupil now? Now, where is each pupil now is sort of like to gauge where they have learned so far and what they have understood so far. So this could be before a learning, before a lesson, in between a lesson, and after a lesson. It could be happening all the time. So where is each pupil now is a very important question as well. And third question, how do we get there? So how do we get there? Of course, if it's a learning destination, of course, you need some medium, some transportation to help you to get there. So how do we get there? Are probably the activities or the differentiated learning strategies that teachers have planned for pupils to get there. All right. So these are the three key concepts of formative assessment. Now I'm going to also mention a bit the examples in lesson planning, because my fellow colleagues, my comrades, will be talking about the formative assessment examples in each skill. So I'm just going to touch on it basically, generally. So for where are we going? That is actually consists of our induction set. Okay, our starters activities. That is where are we going is being asked. We have the starter activities. So we introduce the learning objectives and the success criteria for our kids, right? So bear in mind, teachers, sharing learning objectives in CFR is very much promoted by having kids-friendly language. So we usually use the acronym "We are learning to" instead of learning objectives. That is very much for teachers' reference, right? But for the children, we can just say we are learning to. So everyone Today we are learning to identify at least 6, all right, of the blanks in the passage given. Okay, so share that information with our pupils, because why? We want them to be owners of their own learning, right? We want them to be responsible for their own learning. If you don't give them that ownership, they wouldn't feel like they would want to learn. Oh, this is just another day in the classroom. So give them a reason to come to school and feel good and feel like they are the owner of their own learning. And as well as the success criteria, right? So we can use the word what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for, WILF, okay, WILF. So what I'm looking for is actually the success criteria. So what would you like for the students to achieve for that lesson, okay? So what I'm looking for is for you to identify at least 6 answers correctly today, okay? So they have their own target set for themselves. So they know what they need to do. Okay, now in CFR syllabus in CFR aligned syllabus, it's very much celebrating the little moments in learning, okay? And that is also what formative assessment is all about, as opposed to summative, okay? Summative is, okay, by the end of the semester, by the end of the year, all right? But formative assessment is celebrating little moments in the classroom teaching and learning process. So that's why we use the can-do statements, okay? So that every student feel good about what they can do on each day, day-to-day basis, lesson-to-lesson basis, all right? Rather than summing up at the end of a semester. So that's very important. And also for where is each pupil now, the examples are like having deliberate practice. Okay, deliberate practice is where you have small steps to achieve the LOs. Okay, teachers need to plan small steps, little bridges for less proficient students to cross in order to achieve the lesson objective. And then you have questioning, you have discussions, you have quick scans, you have self-assessment and peer assessment. I'll be talking about this later in my next slide. And about the third question, how do we get there, is the final destination. So how to go to the final destination? Of course, we need feedbacks, right? So feedbacks come in 3 types. We have feedback, just giving feedbacks like awesome job, great, good work there, okay? That is feedback. And then you have like feed forward. Feed forward is when you give feedback and then forward it by mentioning what they can improve. And the third one is feed up, okay? Feed up, not fed up. Fed up is a different thing, okay? Feed up. So feed up means more towards at the end of, no, not at the end, sorry. At the beginning of the year, you come and see every student and have them feed up. You tell them what you expect them to achieve for the whole year, okay? So they have their own set of target, all right? Okay, next please. Thank you. Now for time cycles, okay, in formative assessment. Now, as I mentioned, formative assessment is ongoing, but there are time cycles, okay? It's ongoing. So the short cycle involves the within and between lessons in our own classroom practices. The length could be minute by minute and day by day, okay? And then we also have the teaching and learning strategies, example which are like starters and plenaries, questioning, self-assessment, peer assessment, and exit cards. I'll be talking about that more later. Yes, Syarifah? Can I continue? Sorry, I cannot hear you.
Yeah, sure, you can continue. I'll just ask the questions at the end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, next slide, we are talking about the medium cycle, okay? Now, the medium cycle is where the span is within and between teaching units. Now, this is where sort of like where you have a short test, not a test, sorry, a short quiz. Don't call it test. Test sounds so summative. Okay, a short quiz. Okay, you just want to have a topical quiz, assessing on their knowledge of 3 units that you have taught, or even 1 unit. Okay, okay, and then the length is 1 to 4 weeks. 1 to 4 weeks. Okay, that means probably consists of 1 or 2 units. All right, and then the teaching and learning strategies are like assignments, practice tests, and end of unit quiz. Okay, next. We have the long cycle. Now, formative assessment can also take place in a long cycle where the span is across terms or across teaching units. So this is more like, you can say, a test, right? You have at the end of 1 semester, and then you have a test, and then at the end of the year, you have a test. Okay, but what's the difference between this test with a summative test? All right, now the difference is in the teaching and learning strategies. Okay, we make those tests, the purpose is as benchmarking tests. All right, benchmarking test, or in other words, I think our teachers are more familiar with diagnostic test. Okay, we have the test for the sake of looking at how the students have understood, not just merely as grade, not just to grade them. We are taking steps to help them afterwards, maybe to do intervention, maybe to do remedial classes. So benchmarking tests are like diagnostic tests, yeah? And then end of the term or year test and exams. Okay, now when they have final examinations, all right, when they have final examinations, that means if you just simply grade them and be gone with it, then that's a summative assessment. But formative assessment is when teachers take the result of those grades and do something about it the next year. Okay, do something about it the next year. So this could be like our TOV. All right, our TOV, we take our students' previous year's final examination grade and do something about it for our current year. All right, so we can maybe plan a better lesson or a better curriculum. No, that's not our job, but at least that's what it's for, right? The curriculum or the syllabus, we just have to follow it through. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, next, I'm going to talk about FA techniques, all right, what we can do in the classroom. So I'm sure all of you have heard of this, so I'm just going to go on very quickly, but I hope everyone can understand me. Okay, first one is we have the quick all pupils response. Now, quick all pupils response is a very useful technique in FA. For example, I'm sure everyone is familiar with the traffic lights, right? Okay, I'll show you an example, right? The traffic lights. So we have traffic lights here. So we have the color red, yellow, amber and green. So when every time we need to assess our students' understanding after we have taught, pre-lesson or while lesson, and then we just want to understand where is each pupil now. So we want a quick all pupils response. We can ask them to show their traffic light, right? And then another technique is the thumbs up, thumbs down, and thumbs sideways. Okay, thumbs up means they are okay, thumbs down means they are not okay, and thumbs sideways maybe means confused and needs guidance. So this is a very effective quick all pupils response for teachers to formatively know what to do. Okay, so for those who put up their hands like this, thumbs down, or maybe put up their traffic light as a red color, so teachers can then and there do something to guide them. Whereas those with green traffic light or with thumbs up, you can already set them with the next task. And those who are confused, they probably need your guidance a little bit more. Okay. Okay, next we have the effective questioning and also the feedbacks. Okay, I'm going to talk about effective questioning first. Okay, next slide. Okay, effective questioning means you need to plan your questioning carefully. Okay, teachers, there's a data that says teachers always ask questions as much as 300 questions per day. Can you imagine asking? That's the data on it. So imagine having to ask 300 questions per day. Do you think all those questions are related to learning? So teachers don't just ask questions for the sake of asking. Okay, we need to plan our questions carefully and then use big questions to introduce a new topic. Okay, big questions means a hinge question just to introduce a general idea of the concept and then go into deeper and deeper. And then ask questions that dig deeper than the surface. So use probing technique, okay, probing technique. And then for discussion, we can have use statements for discussion rather than questions. So instead of asking in a question manner, just have a statement, right? And then ask them to discuss. So that is also another questioning technique. Encourage pupils to make their own questions. So again, teachers, questions doesn't necessarily have to come from teachers, okay? We encourage pupils to also ask their friends, right? After their friends have presented something maybe. So questions from the floor. So that keeps their wheels turning. And then create a supportive atmosphere. Of course, when we create a supportive atmosphere, we must welcome mistakes, right? And then interpret what people say, don't just evaluate. Here means if the questions doesn't sound really smart, okay, doesn't really get the gist of it. So teachers need to help interpret those questions. Don't simply just evaluate the students don't know how to ask or don't know how to answer, things like that, okay? Now, in effective questioning, there are a few techniques that I can also mention quickly. Very important for teachers to remember to give wait time. Wait time means you wait for 1 minute, okay? You pose a question, you give wait time for 1 minute for them to sort of think about it and let it sink in, and then only you pick and choose who's going to answer that, okay? Don't just straight away after asking, expecting them to answer, okay? So don't straight away pounce, you just give them wait time for at least 1 minute. Okay, and then teachers can also use logistics, right? I'm sure by now you are familiar with logistics. All right, so this is like a favorite of mine also. I have it here. Write your student's name here. Every time you pose a question and you don't want them to, you know, sort of go into their shell of a tortoise, okay? So you use the logistics, okay? So everybody needs to get ready for that. It gives the element of surprise. And one more thing, we can also use the medium, which is a mini whiteboard. Mini whiteboard is also a very effective technique when answering you, okay? You are questioning them, so they use their mini whiteboards to answer, okay? All right. Next slide, please. Okay, so just now I've also mentioned another FA10 technique is giving feedback, right? So features of a good feedback, of course, it must be descriptive. So when we give feedback, don't just say awesome and don't describe anything about what's so awesome about it. So be descriptive, be specific, okay? That's what makes it even more valuable for pupils. And then focus on changeable actions. Changeable actions here means they are learning mannerisms, okay? In terms of learning mannerisms, what can be changed? What skills can be improved, okay? So don't focus on the physical attributes. For example, just for the sake of giving feedback, you say, oh, good job, and I like how you look handsome today, Ahmad. Don't focus on the physical attributes. Those things are not changeable actions, okay? Giving feedbacks mean what they can improve on in terms of their learning mannerisms and also their skills, okay? Identifies what was done well. So keep on the positive first. Give the positive feedbacks first and then identify what can be improved. Never go and give unconstructive feedback, okay? So the word is give constructive feedbacks, okay? Don't diminish our pupils' interest. And the feedback must be tied to the lesson, okay? If not, the pupils won't understand. Oh, teacher taught something else, but feedback something else. So it wouldn't be relevant to them. And it must be familiar, using words they are familiar with so that they can understand what you want them to change, all right? And it must also relate to the learning objective and success criteria. So again, back to the lesson plan. Okay, next. Okay, so in giving feedbacks, of course, one of the things that we can do is have self-assessment ideas. Okay, so teachers, by having formative assessment, actually, the assessment doesn't necessarily have to come from you only. Okay, when we teach our students to be familiarized with self-assessment, that means assessing themselves, it gives them the ownership, the responsibility of their own learning even more. So teach them, okay, even from a young age, a simple checklist, okay, whether they did well, check. Whether they did not so well, check. So that is also already assessing themselves, okay. So here are a few ideas. We have the learning logs and also exit cards. Now I'm going to talk about exit cards now first, and also I'm going to show later in another slide. But just to mention for all teachers that in our SOW, okay, year 5, usually if you notice at the end of a unit, there's a checklist, self-assessment checklist, asking how did I do, and in English, I know how to, if you notice, right, in the SOW, at the end of every unit. So please, teachers, go back and look again at your SOW. That is also an example of self-assessment checklist, okay? So they can checklist themselves, and what you do with it is maybe you print it out, okay, give to each pupil, and then they just paste in another book that they call learning logs, right? So that is what learning logs. So whatever they feel they have assessed themselves for their own learning, put it in a book that they call learning logs. So in the learning logs could be a self-assessment checklist, could be consist of learning journals, whatever, reflection, whatever. So those are learning logs. Now, exit cards, on the other hand, is like when you ask for them to do something, an activity before ending, okay, or before moving to another activity. So we usually do this. If you don't finish your work, you cannot go to recess, okay? So something like that, but make it more constructive, okay? Make it more relevant to the lesson. So exit cards are activities that you would like for them to complete, to reflect upon before moving on to the next lesson stage in the lesson, all right? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we also have peer assessment ideas, all right? Now, peer assessment means they assess their friends, okay? Not just themselves, but they can also be taught to assess their friends. So in CFR Aligned Syllabus, we have this technique. Actually, we have been doing it, but there's a term for it, okay? And a very controlled and safe technique called 2 stars and a wish. You can never go wrong with this. 2 stars and wish means we teach them to give feedbacks for their friends by having 2 positive things that they like about their friend's presentation or their friend's answer, for example. And a wish means what they would like for their friends to improve on. So that's where 2 stars and a wish comes from. Teach this technique to our kids and they can come up. So with assessing their friends without hurting their feelings, right? So for example, you call Siti, can you give 2 stars and a wish for Ahmad's group today? So Siti can stand and say, my 2 stars for your group are, you explained really well, and I like your pictures. It's very clear in the presentation. My wish for you is for you to be more clear in explaining the situation or something like that. Okay, so that's 2 stars and a wish. All right, next is peer assessment to improve answers. Okay, same thing, also give feedbacks, asking pupils to give feedbacks on what could be better. All right, and they work alone first. What could be better about that thing, about that presentation of their friend, and then you ask them to group themselves in a small group and then compare their points and then choose one that is best representing the whole assessment for their friends. That is peer assessment to improve answers. Okay, and then design own spot test. Now this one also probably it's a bit tricky for young learners for the level 1, but for the level 2, I think it's possible, especially if the pupils are very proficient, okay, more proficient pupils, they can design own spot test. That means after their friends have given presentation or ideas, even your lesson, the students can come up with 3 questions about it, right? They can work in groups or individually, come up with 3 questions and then exchange with another group. Okay, exchange the questions with another group and then return back the paper, the question to the original group, and the original group will mark whether the answer is correct or not. So these are what is meant by own spot test. Okay, next. Okay, next we go to medal and missions feedback. All right, I hope I'm not going very fast. I hope I'm going okay here because I still have one more colleague to continue. So if I'm going very fast, I'm sorry. You can just ask questions later. I'll address them. Okay, medals and missions feedback. Now, medals and missions feedback is also another technique in giving feedback apart from 2 stars and a wish. So what it is like medals are the good points, okay? The positive points that you would like to address. And then the mission is what you would like for the student to improve on. So if you look at the diagram here by Patty 2014, if you look at the stickman at the bottom there, he or she, it looks very suffering like that. He is suffering by pushing the medal, right? Because it's the beginning, so it's a higher climb. It's a tougher climb to go. But as you feed with the mission, okay, it gets better and better, and the stickman is now able to stand a bit sturdier and pushing the medal towards the goal. Okay, so the symbolism here is like if you feed with mission, feed with what to be improved for our pupils. Okay, so sooner or later, their goals will become easier to achieve. Okay, next slide. Okay, so in relation to year 5, so I'll just show to you here sample from SOW itself, right? So this is taken from page 22. Okay, page 22 of the SOW. If you look back at your SOW year 5, you would notice that there are examples of how you can give peer assessment, self-assessment. So I'm just going to show here one very quickly. This is using the medal and mission model. Okay, so it's being described in the SOW as an example. So teachers, go and have a look at your SOW. It's all there. Like my colleague mentioned just now, my fellow comrade Lim mentioned, it is sort of like our holy book, right? You can never go wrong with it, all right? Whenever we refer to the SOW, it's very precise, concise, everything is there. It's just a matter of researching it, all right? Okay, next slide. Now I'm going to touch on differentiated learning. Okay, is it okay if I go on, Ms. Syarifah, or do I have to address any questions first or at the end?
I think you can go on, Ms. Freida. I will ask you questions at the end of your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so next, not to say topic, another content of my presentation today is differentiated learning. So when talk about differentiated learning, it must touch on differentiation strategies, right? Now, differentiated learning is an approach to plan lessons for a class of individuals. It is a way of thinking about the classroom so that each pupil's learning needs are met, okay, and each pupil reaches their potential. Now, why do we need to have differentiated learning? The answer is very easy. It's because in all schools, we have the mixed ability classroom, okay? We have the mixed ability classroom. So of course, we must have differentiated learning. Okay, so next slide. So again, taken from the SOW, okay, taken from the SOW, year 5. Also, I think this is on page 23 until 25. Page 23 until 25 talks about the differentiation strategies available. Okay, so we have 7 strategies altogether. All have been typed out, all have been displayed in our SOW. Okay, so I'm just going to go quickly. You can go back and refer to your own SOW. So the first one, a strategy is differentiate by the task pupils are given. So differentiation by task means you have different tasks for more proficient pupils and you have different tasks for less proficient pupils. Okay, it could be in terms of the task sheet, for example. It could be in the terms of the questions that you ask are different. So that is the meaning of task. Okay, all right, next slide. Okay, next strategy is differentiate by the type and amount of support provided. Now, if you feel I'm going very fast, don't worry, because my comrades after this would touch more when they talk about skills. Okay, you can see clearly. So the second one is type and amount of support. This is very easy. We can say what kind of teaching aids are we providing for them. Okay, it could be in terms of instructions, giving instructions that are simple, that are familiar to the less proficient ones, whereas the more proficient ones, you can give lengthy instructions. Okay, consists of complex words. Okay, all right, next we have the gestures. Okay, gestures means when you explain, sorry again, back to the one before. Okay, gestures means when you are explaining, the more proficient ones, you don't need much gestures, but the less proficient one, you need gestures. Now, visuals means you use pictures, you use flashcards, and then helping words, things like that. Okay, now I'm done. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, by strategy number 3 is differentiation by outcome. This is the most common one. Okay, the most common one, which is the outcome of the learning objectives, right? How many, at least, the word at least in our lesson objectives shows you what is the minimum, bare minimum that the pupils need to do. Okay, all right, next. Differentiation by time. So again, very self-explanatory. You give longer time for those who need more support, okay, time support. So for the less proficient, longer time to finish a task. It's the same task, but longer time. Whereas the more proficient one, you give shorter time or the normal time. And if they are fast finishers, you reward them, okay? You reward them by doing something that is enriching their learning journey of the day. Okay, don't just reward them by saying, okay, you can do your own work. That is not really constructive for them. Okay, reward them by maybe giving them another task sheet that you have prepared for the ones that you know are going to be fast finishers. Okay, that's an example. Next one. Okay, I'll just have a few more to go. Don't worry. Okay, next, differentiate by supporting individual learning preferences and needs. These are the learning styles, okay? So in the classroom, we must really get to know our pupils. Some are kinesthetic. They like to move about. So, you know, some days you can have lessons that involve moving about, okay? And then other days, you notice some like visual ones. So put up maps, put up pictures. And then other days, you notice, oh, those are audio learning group of pupils. They like to listen to music. So also cater to that, all right? Okay, next. And then differentiate by types of questions asked. So types of questions asked, of course, for more proficient ones, you can have open-ended questions, and the less proficient ones just have a closed-ended questions, okay? Simple and precise, but as long as they understand. However, the more proficient ones, you can just go with the hot question and then let them think and come up with any possible answers. Okay, next one, strategy number 7. Is differentiate by the feedback given. Okay, this one talking about feedback also, for example, in a writing activity, right? For less proficient pupils to be able to write even a short paragraph is like, you know, a very daunting task. So you just, you know, you give feedback for their effort of finishing a task, and then don't really highlight on the mistakes. Just give feedbacks, positive feedbacks first. But however, you need for them to improve. So pinpoint only 1 to 2 glaring mistakes that you would like for them to improve. But if you don't highlight on all the mistakes that they have done, because that would diminish their motivation. So be sensitive in that sense. Whereas for the more proficient ones, right, whenever they have their write-up, right, you can just straight away go through and then do some, you know, your own symbols. And then what you can do is call them and see what they think they did wrong, so that they identify themselves what they did wrong, okay? These are for the more proficient ones. They will be able to know, oh, I did a spelling mistake here. Whereas originally you just did a line there, right? But the pupils can identify. So you just give back the paper and say, what did you think wrong? And then let me know again. And then when they come back to you again and show to you what they have identified wrong, that means they have done their own assessment. So that's how you differentiate by feedback, okay? Okay, next slide. Okay, again, in our SOW Year 5, there are many examples in our lesson itself suggesting the differentiation strategies that we can use. So I'm showing to you now is an example from lesson 17, unit 1. Okay, page 52. The suggested strategy there, number 6, is by giving feedback. Okay, by giving feedback. But however, teachers, because it's listening for main idea, so in a longer text, so maybe the less proficient ones doesn't really need to get a really critical feedback, okay? Be sensitive in those feedbacks, but the more proficient one can get really precise feedbacks. But also, if you feel that's not your concern, you can change the suggested differentiation learning strategies to maybe strategy 4. That means the amount of time you give, okay? So the less proficient would get longer time to listen to the text, whereas the more proficient would just get a normal time. Okay. And then next slide. I think, okay. Now this is not for, I don't think I have time for this, but just to show you, this is a good reflection activity to be done as an exit card. This is where I say I'm going to talk about exit card, an activity where you would like for the kids to reflect upon. So you can do the pyramid reflection, where you have on top a question you want to ask. Middle one is 2 words that have made an impression. And the third one, 3 keywords that are important. So basically, teachers can change anything that is in the pyramid, whatever questions you would like for them to answer. And that is the exit card of the day. And after they have done, they can just paste in their learning logs. Okay, so I think with that, that is all from me. I shall pass over the floor back to Ms. Syarifah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the very clear explanation and for the sharing, Ms. Freida. So formative assessment and the differentiation strategies can be very tricky, but I'm sure everyone can have a better understanding after listening to what Ms. Freida has presented just now, especially in a class where we have a lot of students with different backgrounds and different learning abilities. So Ms. Freida, there's a questions from one of the audience today. Is it necessary to have the differentiation instruction strategies mentioned in the lesson plan?
Okay, is it necessary to have the differentiated instruction strategy mentioned in the lesson plan? Okay, now it's not a necessity, but it would be good if as teachers, we have differentiated instructions. That means probably for the ones that are more proficient, you can just give a general instruction. But then you repeat yourself for the less proficient ones by using simpler words and then shorter, simple sentence, shorter sentence so that they understand more. It's totally up to teachers. It's not a necessity, but it will be good if teachers feel that it's needed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I do agree with that too. And as a viewer said here, Miss Puspa, because I think teachers have been doing it without knowing the terminology, the differentiated
Yes.
strategies. Yeah. So I think all teachers have been doing it. It's just that we're not so sure whether that is the name for differentiated strategies.
Exactly. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Freida. So,
Most welcome.
all right. So next, allow me to introduce to you the third and the last speaker for today, Miss Viloshena Ravindran. She's a JU Negeri for CFR. She graduated from MPIK UM in 2008. She is a JU Linus Book 1 and Book 2, JU KSSR for Year 4, 5, and 6, JU CFR Learning Materials Adaptation, and also one of the writers of the GEMS module and PTRS module. She is currently teaching in SJKT Pulau Carey Timur, Kuala Langat, and today she will be presenting on listening and speaking lesson plans. So let's welcome you, Miss Vilo.
Okay, thank you, Miss Syarifah. Let me share my screen first. Can you all see my screen? Miss Syarifah,
Yes.
my dear. Hello.
Hold on, I think we're waiting. We
Okay, I
haven't,
think
we can't see your screen yet. Yeah, I think it's not there yet.
yes. Now it's here. I think All right, right?
Not here yet.
Yeah, now it's here. I think. Is it here, my dear?
Not here yet. Oh yes, it's here already.
Yes,
Miss
it's
Vilo?
here, right? Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. So,
All right. Okay.
back to you, Miss Vilo.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Syarifah. First of all, a very good evening to all of you. And thanks to the State Education Department for giving me this opportunity to share some ways of writing CEFR aligned lesson plan. It's just a suggestion and it's some ways, okay? It's not the correct way because there's no correct way of writing a lesson plan, but it's just a suggestion. And for today, we are going to focus specifically on the lesson plan of a listening skill and speaking skill. All right. So first, let's look at the listening skills lesson plan. All right. As we are focusing on the year five English plus one book, so the lesson plan is also based on the year 5 English plus one book. All right. Now, the lesson plan that we decided to do is taken from the SOW or the year 5 scheme of work, specifically the one that is in lesson 89 for the SK schools and SJK schools, it's lesson 53. As we know, in most of the lesson plans, there are audio tracks mentioned. You can actually obtain the audio track for this particular lesson in this link. This link links you to Telegram, teachers. Okay, so we are focusing on Unit 5. The topic is food and health. All right, now let's look at the lesson plan. Before we look at the lesson plan, as usual, the first thing that we have to look at is the learning standards. These learning standards were obtained from the scheme of work. It's not something that I got randomly from the DSKP, but it's from the scheme of work, lesson 89, SJK, lesson 53. As you can see here, the main skill is listening, as well the complementary skill is also listening. Here, 1.2.1, understand with support the main idea of longer simple text on a range of familiar topics, and the complementary skill, in this case, it's also a listening skill, which is recognized and reproduced with little or no support a wide range of target language phonemes. Okay, teachers, if you look at the learning standards, right, sometimes there are certain terminologies that you will not understand. What you have to do is, you have to look at the scheme of work. The terminologies will be actually defined in the scheme of work. If you go to the scheme of work and you look at the glossary session, there will be a reference which tells us what does this mean, target language phonemes. What does target language phonemes refer to? All you have to do is go to the scheme of work, look at the glossary session. It will give you an explanation on what it means. All right, teachers? Okay, now, after getting the learning standard, the next thing that we should do is we should write the learning objectives. Now, as we are aware, the learning objectives have to reflect the learning standard. It has to reflect the learning standard. And at the same time, according to CFR, it has to be smart. We teachers are smart, but these learning standards have to be smart as in specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Now, let's look at the learning objectives. This is our learning standard as mentioned before, and based on this learning standard, this is the learning objective. The learning standard again is a reflection, the learning objective is a reflection of the learning standard. As you can see here, by the end of the lesson, pupils will be able to listen and understand the main idea from the audio clip by identifying at least 9 words correctly. All right, here it's mentioned at least 9 words correctly, teachers, and it's a reflection of the learning standard, main idea, okay? Now, all right, now I'll explain to you the smart learning objectives, all right? How is it specific? It is specific because we mentioned by identifying, not answering questions, not guessing, not grouping, but by identifying. Hence, it is specific. Now, we have actually put measurable and attainable together because for this particular objective, it can be grouped together. Now, how is it measurable? There is a number there, 9 words. So how do you measure the students have achieved your objectives? Is using the number which is 9 words. How is it attainable? Now, in this particular activity, the pupils will have to listen to an audio and underline answers correctly based on the audio that they have heard. In the audio, there will be 18 words mentioned. So out of the 18 words, we only want them to attain 9 words. Only 9 words, which is like 50%. So it's attainable in that sense. It's attainable as in it can be achieved. Okay, teachers? Okay, why 9 words? You may ask me, why 9 words? Why not 10? Why not 11? Remember, teachers, like what my friends before me mentioned, it is supposed to be CFR focuses on what the students can do, what the students can achieve. So 9 words is the minimum level that we require the students to achieve, which in most situations, it can be achieved. But again, teachers, it depends on your pupils. If your pupils are high achievers, you can actually increase the number of words that you want them to identify, all right? And again, another thing, teachers, the reason why we didn't use 9 out of 18 words is because if you do that, it's that you're limiting them. Okay, just 18. Out of 9 out of 18, you're limiting, you're like setting a limitation, which is not advisable. That is why we use the word at least 9 words and no out of 18. Okay, now next, realistic. How is it realistic? It's realistic in the sense that the audio can be obtained easily by the teachers. This audio is provided by BPK to us. It's actually provided with the textbooks, and at the same time, if teachers find it difficult and they say, okay, it's difficult for me to get the audio, I don't have a CD player on my laptop, what you can do is you can actually go to Telegram and you can get that audio from Telegram. Just use the link that we provided you earlier. The audios are all there. So it's realistic in the sense that the audio is readily available and it can be obtained easily by the teachers. Next, it is time bound. How is it time bound? By the end of the lesson, which means by the end of the lesson, by the end of this particular lesson, the pupils will be able to achieve that particular learning objective. So most of our lesson plans are time bound because all our lesson plans, the objective of the lesson plans start with the phrase by the end of the lesson. So in that sense, it's time bound all the time. Okay, teachers? Now, let's move on. I'm sorry if I'm going too fast. Now, let's move on to the next one. Okay, just now it was the main skills, main learning standards objectives. Now, let's look at the complementary learning objectives. For CFR, teachers, it's advisable for us to have 2 learning objectives for 2 different learning standards because you have the main learning standard as well as the complementary learning standard. So it's advisable for you to have 2 learning objectives, one that reflects the main learning standard and the other one that reflects upon the complementary learning standard. All right, in this case, the complementary learning standard is 1.1.1, recognize and reproduce with little or no support a wide range of target language phonemes. Again, teachers, as I mentioned before, if you do not understand what's the meaning of target language phonemes, you're confused, go back to your SOW. It's stated in the SOW. What is target language phonemes? It's in the SOW in the glossary session. All right. Next, here the learning objective is by the end of the lesson, pupils will be able to listen, identify and state at least 3 words with the correct short and long vowels in the respective categories correctly. Now, teachers, I have a question. Is this complementary objective smart enough? we teachers are smart, but is the objective smart enough? Now, let's see, how can we make this objective even more smart? Not even more smarter, not even smarter, but even more smart. All right? Now, as you can see here, this is the objective just now, right, teachers? By the end of the lesson, pupils will be able to listen, identify, and state at least 3 words with the correct short and long vowels in the respective categories correctly. Here, we have made it even more smart. How? Identify, listen, identify, and state. We have actually grouped it together and we have made it categorized only. Okay, why? Simply because, remember my friend mentioned just now about success criteria? Listen, identify, and state will be the things that lead to the pupils being able to categorize the words. You have to listen, you have to identify, you state. Only after doing these 3 that will you be able to categorize the words, right, teachers? So, listen, identify, and state normally appears in your success criteria. We do not want to go into success criteria in detail because it actually depends on your schools, on your districts, and on your states whether it should be stated in the lesson plan or not. Hence, we will not go into success criteria in detail. We only touch on the objectives. Okay, teachers? So remember, these 2 words actually would appear in the success criteria. And this is your objective. The success criteria actually leads to the students attaining the objectives. All right, teachers? Your next question may be, why only 3 words? If you look at the audio later on, there are actually 6 words. So 3 is again 50% out of the 6 words. And again, teachers, it depends on your pupils. If you think your pupils are not, if your pupils are very good, you can actually put it at a higher level. All right, teachers? Okay. Now, as mentioned before, the lesson plan was taken from the SOW. Now, this is the lesson plan, that a screenshot of the lesson that was taken from the scheme of work. Again, SK's lesson 89, SJK's lesson 53. Okay, teachers? Now, this lesson plan was in the SOW or is in the SOW. Remember, teachers, the SOW is like what my friends mentioned before. It's something, it's like a Bible that we can follow, but we have to adapt and adopt. Remember back in 2016 or 17, if I'm not mistaken, we teachers were sent for a course in which we were taught how to adapt the materials. Just like that, we have to also adapt and adopt the lesson plans given in the SOW. It does not mean you take the SOW and the activities there and follow it just like as if it's like that's the thing I should follow. No, you have to adapt and adopt the activities in the lesson plan to suit your pupils. All right, teachers, remember the key word, adapt and adopt. Now, this is the lesson plan given in the SOW. What we have done is we have taken this lesson plan and we have adapted it. All right, now let's look at the adapted version of the lesson plan. Now, first is the pre-lesson. For the pre-lesson, pupils would be required to name at least would be required to name types of food in 30 seconds. Now, if you look at the textbook, right, teachers, most of the food mentioned in the textbook would be food that's available in foreign lands. So what you teachers can do is you ask the pupils to name their food stuff, right? When they name, they would normally name food that's available locally. So from that, you can actually move them on and you can actually guide them to going into the lesson where they look at food that's available overseas. So when they name food, you just jot down the name of the food lah. Okay, so that's the pre-lesson. That means you're actually guiding them, gearing them towards the lesson. You're asking them to make connections between the local context as well as the foreign context. All right, so first, pupils name the types of food in 30 seconds. Next, and then in the lesson delivery stage, for activity 2, pupils listen to the audio track and choose the correct words. Now, later on, we will look at the text that where pupils have to actually choose the correct words, okay, teachers? But in the audio, there'll be actually names of food mentioned. Only the name of the food is mentioned. There is no sentence, nothing, only the name of the food. Okay, here there is a differentiation strategy that's applied, which is preference and needs. All right, we will go to that later. After that, once they have done that, pupils complete a word web and discuss the importance of using a word web. They'll actually after completing and underlining the correct answers, based on the answers, they'll actually complete a word web. Then they'll tell you the importance of the word web. When they look at the word web, they have a rough idea on why we use a word web and why is it important. Here, FA or formative assessment is applied, which is deliberate practice. Okay, next, FA according to CE and teachers. After that, pupils complete the table with short and long vowels That also based on the audio that we share with them. Okay, teachers? After that, the optional activity here is pupils rank the foods and compare their lists. Optional activity here is a suggestion for pupils who finish fast or fast finishes. Of course, we have got good students in the class, right, teachers? So when they have finished the exercise, they'll be simply doing nothing. So we can actually ask them to get together with their friends and then rank list based on the list just now, the list of food that they actually listed down. Ask them to rank the food from what they like the most, being maybe 1 being the least preferred and 5 the most preferred food, and then they compare the list with their friends. Again, this optional activity is meant for the fast finishers. Teachers, you can actually get a range of optional activities for these fast finishers in your teacher's book that's provided to all of us in schools. Okay, next. All right, this is the screenshot of the picture taken from the student's book, English +1 student's book. As you can see here, there's actually sentences here. The pupils will have to listen to the audio and underline the correct sentence here. Okay, next. After this, they'll have to complete this word web. This word web is actually here, teachers. It's here. Once they've underlined the correct answers, then they would have to complete the word web. You remember the question just now? Why is it word web important? The answer is actually here. It's given in the textbook itself. So people should have a rough idea on why a word web is important. All right. Okay, next. And this is the table they should complete based on the short and long vowels, the sound of the short and long vowels. As you can see here, I mentioned there were 10 words. 4 has been given as examples, and the balance 6 are the ones that the students should be able to put into groups. Okay. Now, these 4 words, right, teachers, if you listen to the audio, they've actually mentioned short vowel, and they've actually given you the example for that, and the long vowel, and then they've given you an example. There's an explanation given in the audio itself. So we teachers do not have to crack our head. It's realistic in that sense. It's given to us. Okay, now that's done with the lesson delivery stage. Next is the post-lesson. Pupils make a word ladder using the topic of food. You may wonder, oh, what is a word ladder? Again, refer to the scheme of work. In the scheme of work, in the beginning part of the scheme of work, if you study the scheme of work properly, teachers, in the beginning part of the scheme of work, there will be 12 suggestions, 12 suggested pre-lesson activities and 12 suggested post-lesson activities. This is one of it, a word ladder, whereby you place people into groups, 4 or 5 people in a group, for an example. You draw a ladder on the board, you write the word category at the bottom of the ladder. For an example, if I choose fruits, I will write fruits, and then the pupils take turns to complete the ladder. There's 2 ways you can do it. One, you set them a time limit, whereby within 30 seconds, you see how many people can complete the ladder. The team with the most relevant answers will win. Or the other way is you set them, okay, 5 people in a group, see which group finishes first. Okay, but make sure the answers are relevant, and then those who finish and the group that finishes first with the correct answers will be awarded a gift. That is an example of make a word ladder. All right, teachers, this is actually used in the post-lesson activity. Why do you do this? Remember, teachers, this is testing. This is the first lesson actually for the topic food. We are actually testing the pupils' vocab. So when you actually ask them to complete the word ladder, you are testing their vocabulary, and at the same time, you're testing their spelling. Okay, teachers? All right, next. Okay, remember the differentiation strategy used? It was strategy type 5. It is not the 5th strategy. Some of you all get confused and say, oh, this is the first strategy, this is the second strategy. No, it is strategy type 5. There are 7 different types of differentiation. This is the 5th type. 5th type, but it's just not the 5th one in order. Okay, the 5th type of strategy actually suggests that we support individuals according to their learning preferences and needs. As you know, we have got visual learners, audio learners, and kinesthetic learners. In this particular activity, they are supposed to listen to the audio. Most of the time, when pupils listen to the audio, they actually caters for audio learners. The visual learners and the kinesthetic learners may find it difficult. So what we can do is we can actually pause the audio in between. In that sense, there's differentiation. Okay, teachers? Right? And then maybe you have the weaker students in class. For them also, you'll need to pause the audio in between so that it will help them actually listen and underline the correct answers. Okay, teachers? Next is the FA, or formative assessment. FA here is FA by CE. It is an activity 3 whereby we use deliberate practice whereby they complete the word web, right, teachers? In the word web, it's actually from the word, the phrases in the textbook. They read the phrases, right? From the phrases, they actually complete a word web. That means from the word level, it's going on to the sentence level. So that's deliberate practice. Okay. And then CBA or classroom-based assessment. Now, as you can remember, the learning standard is 1.2.1. Understand with support the main idea of longer simple text on a range of familiar topics. All right. Now, CBA is classroom-based assessment or PBD, teachers. For us to do CBA or PBD, we have to refer to the DSKP. In the DSKP, the descriptors for each level is stated. Each descriptor refers to one or two learning standards. As you can see here, this one refers to 1.2.1, just listening and listen. If you look at the learning standard just now, understand with support the main idea of longer simple text on a range of familiar topics. Again, teachers, what is longer simple text? The definition is given in the glossary section of the scheme of work. Now, the main idea here, right, teachers, it's reflected in the descriptor. Can you see? Main idea? Right. Now, the highlighted words here are the ones that will actually help or guide you to give your pupils a performance level. Will actually guide you in actually awarding a performance level to your pupils. All right. If you look at the first one here, with a lot of support, can display minimal understanding with a lot of support. Can display some understanding with a lot of support. Display understanding. Can you see there's a difference? With support. Can understand. There's no longer minimal, some, or display understanding. It's can understand details of longer simple text with support, again, by responding to given tasks at times. Given tasks at times. Here, with support by responding to given tasks most of the time. Here, with support by responding to given tasks most of the time. If you look at number 5 and performance level 5 and 6, it's the same. Okay, now, how would you differentiate then? Remember, teachers, we are not just assessing the pupils based on one particular descriptor. It's looked holistically. There are other descriptors under the listening skill as well. So you refer to that and then you give a performance level to your pupils. Refer to the other learning standards as well and the other descriptors. But one most important, one way you can distinguish a 5 and a 6 is the pupils who are in performance level 5 most of the time would be able to guide their friends. That is one of the keywords. Okay, teachers? Now, let's look at the next one. We move on to the speaking skill. All right. Now, let's look. For the speaking skill, again, taken from your SOW, if just now the listening skills lesson plan was lesson 89 for SK and lesson 53 for SJK. For this particular one, SK is lesson 90 and SJK is lesson 54. The audio track link is the same. You have to go to the link and then you can select which particular track do you want to listen to. All right. Again, this track is easily available on Telegram. You just have to go to the link and click it. Okay. Now, the learning standards here are 2.2.1. Keep interaction going in short exchanges by asking suitable questions. How do you keep interaction going? Simply by asking questions. Now, the complementary skill here is a writing skill. Use capital letters, full stops, commas in lists and question marks in independent writing at discourse level. All right. Now, the learning objectives. Just now was keep interaction going, right? So how do you keep interaction going? By asking at least 4 questions about food that they like or don't like. Again, it's attainable because it's just 4 questions. All right, teachers? And they'll actually be given a lot of language input in the audios so that they'll be able to ask these questions to their friends. Now, the complementary skills learning standard. Write at least 3 statements about the food that they like or don't like and like using capital letters, full stops, and commas. Okay, now you may ask me, why didn't I just say using punctuation? Because we use punctuation. Punctuation has a broad meaning. It can mean capital letters, full stops, exclamation marks, question marks, commas, and more than that. But in this particular learning standard, it only focused on capital letters, full stops, and commas. That is why it is specifically mentioned as capital letter, full stops, and commas without saying punctuation, because punctuation has it's a broad term to be used. Okay. Now, in the scheme of work, in SK's scheme of work, again, as mentioned before, it's in lesson 90, SJK, lesson 54. This is the detailed one that you get in your SOW. So don't just go and copy and paste this in your lesson plan. Then you may have to print lesson At the end of the year, we will have a thick book as your lesson plan. So learn how to adopt and adapt. Remember, teachers, adopt and adapt. Even this and also some text that you find it to be difficult, if you want to adopt and adapt it. Okay. Now, this is the adapted version. For your pre-lesson, just like the previous lesson, pupils brainstorm food items. But teachers, bear in mind, this time it's the second lesson. They would have more language input from the previous lesson. So the food items that they actually mentioned will be more compared to the previous lesson. And they will speak about food items that they have actually learned, foreign food items, like the food items that comes from Spain, the UK, and Japan, because these are the things that's mentioned in the previous lesson. Okay, next, after that, pupils, this is the lesson delivery stage. Remember, it's a speaking skill, teachers. First, they have to listen to the audio and complete the table given in the worksheet. Okay, if there's only one audio, but it's broken down into two parts. In the audio, in the first part of the audio, you can listen to a conversation that takes part between Lydia and Sophie, where they actually talk about food that they like and don't like. Okay, after that, in the second part of the audio, there's a conversation between Brian and Georgia, where they talk about what they do during their lunchtime and food that they like to have for lunch and what they do not like to have for lunch. All right. So that activity 2 refers to the first part of the audio. Pupils listen to the audio and complete the table given in the worksheet. This worksheet, the teachers have to prepare themselves. We will show you an example after this. After that, pupils read the school food text and complete the key phrases with examples that students talk about. That means they read the text and at the same time they listen and they complete the key phrases. It's all in the student's book, English Plus One student's book. Next, pupils ask and answer questions using the key phrases in the box in pairs. After that, they actually just complete whatever, they complete the key phrases using whatever they like, and based on that, they ask their friends questions. They ask, and in pairs, they ask each other questions, teachers. All right. Now, by the time they reach activity 4, they've already obtained the input of the language input in activity 2 and 3. So they will be able to ask questions, because in the audio, it's repeated how the sentence structure is repeated on how they can actually ask questions. So they've already obtained the input that will actually help them give the output in activity 4. And here, there's a differentiation strategy applied, which is time. The pupils who are weaker will be given more time to actually respond or come up with the questions. So there's a differentiation strategy applied. After that, pupils are divided into 2 groups. Group A write a perfect school lunch, and Group B writes a horrible or not so nice school lunch, and then they compare the answers. All right. Activity 5 actually reflects upon our complementary learning standard about using full stop, comma, as well as capital letters. Okay. All right. Next, now this is the one just now again. Teachers, remember the speaking lesson and the listening lesson focuses on this page only. All right. As mentioned just now, okay, here are this is the pages, right, teachers? Now let's look at the one in specific. Sorry. It's here. It's this activity. If just now it was this side, these two, now it's this for speaking. This one and this one. Activity 4 and activity 5. Now, if you look at activity 4, as mentioned before, they would have to listen to a conversation between Lydia and Sophie. Based on the competition, they'll actually have to they'll have to write what types of food that Lydia likes and Sophie likes and what they dislike. Okay, based on this, the teacher will have a discussion. After that, they will have to listen to the audio again, but this time it will be a conversation between Ben and Georgia. Ben and Georgia will talk about food that they like to have for lunch. Based on that, they will listen to the audio. In the audio, they're asking each other questions and responding to the questions. Based on that, they will have to fill in these key phrases. Then they will check the answers. After that, what the pupils will do is they will actually practice the sentence structure. They will ask their friends what their friends like, and their friends will ask them. They will take turns to ask each other questions on what are the type of food that they would like to have for lunch and they would not like to have for lunch. Okay. Then, as you can see here, the key phrases are repeated. The questions are also repeated. So somehow or other, the pupils will be able to get the language structure for that day. After that, you move on to the post-lesson. In the post-lesson is where FA or self-assessment and peer assessment takes place. Here, teacher displays the keywords. We'll look at it later. Even the keywords are given in the English Plus One book. Keywords from the lesson. And then pupils ask each other simple yes and no questions to check their understanding of whatever they have learned for that day. Again, what they have learned is food that they would like or do not like to have for lunch or dinner or whatever. So actually, they're checking on vocabulary. All right, teachers? Now let's look. This is post-lesson activity task 9. Task 9 where you actually ask questions about what you like, what you do not like, those kind of things. Where you ask simple questions to check their understanding, to check their vocabulary of what they have learned. Okay, now as you can see here, they work in pairs. This is taken from the English Plus One students book. So you just display these answers on the board. You display these words on the board, and then you ask them to ask questions. Do you like burgers? Yes, I really love burgers. Those kind of things. For the pupils who are not so good, do you like burgers? Yes, I do. That's sufficient enough because you want to test whether they have understood whatever they have learned for that day. Okay, teachers? Excuse me. Now, the differentiation strategy used here is differentiation by the time given. All right. As mentioned before, you can actually give more time to the slower learners to answer questions. For an example, at step 4, some pupils will take longer to respond to the questions about food that they like and do not like as compared to good students. So you give them more time. So strategy type 4. Okay, just time. Formative assessment according to CE. It is not formative assessment according to DSKP. Formative assessment according to CE is self-assessment and peer assessment, whereby they ask each other questions. Pupils ask each other questions to check their understanding of the vocabulary learned. That's all they want to check. Do you like burgers? Yes, I like burgers. No, I do not like burgers because it's filled with vegetables or salads or lettuce. That shows that they have understood the vocab. That's the self-assessment and peer assessment where they check each other. FA, self-assessment and peer assessment. It happens in activity 6 in post-lesson. Okay, now CBA or classroom-based assessment. First, the learning standard 2.2.1. Keep interaction going in short exchanges by asking suitable questions. Now, this is the descriptors. Again, teachers, you can see, can manage interaction. How do you manage interaction? Is by asking questions. So this descriptor reflects 2.2.1's learning standard. Now, how do you differentiate performance level 1 pupils to a performance level 6? It's again highlighted here. Short and simple responses with a lot of support. Task appropriately with a lot of support. You see, short and simple, but here is just task appropriately. Task appropriately without support. There's no support. Task appropriately by sustaining communication at times. That means they can keep the conversation going, but at times. Here, most of the times. And finally, it comes naturally. You don't even have to stop them. It just comes naturally. They can just maintain the whole conversation naturally. So that's the way you differentiate between a performance level 1 to a performance level 6. Okay, teachers? Okay, that's all from me. Any other questions? Are there any questions?
Ms. Vilo, I think we are going to ask the questions in the Q&A session afterwards.
All right, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, my dear.
Thank you, Ms. Vilo. There's a lot that we can benefit from what she has shared with us. And thank you for sharing the insightful ways on how teachers can plan and practice the listening and speaking lesson plan. Okay, so I think we have come to our Q&A session. So can we get all the presenters? All right. So I picked 2 questions from the comment section. All right. So the first question is from Ms. Jayanti. So can we combine the success criteria and the LO? And can you explain it whether we can or not? Any of the presenters wants to share some insights?
Yeah. Shall I try?
All right.
Okay,
Please,
Vilo.
Ms. Vilo.
You'll take
Oh,
it
okay,
first.
thank you. All right. The success criteria is steps that leads to you achieving the learning objectives. So it's like the learning objective is there. The steps that you use to obtain or to achieve the learning objective is the success criteria. You actually cannot, most of the time you cannot combine them. The success criteria is separate and the learning objective is separate. The success criteria is the steps taken to achieve the learning objectives. I hope I'm correct. Miss Freida and Miss Lim, do you agree with me?
Yes. It's like what the students can do to achieve the little goals in order to achieve the main LO.
Yeah.
All right. For example, your LO, okay, would say that the students, the pupils will be able to write a simple sentences correctly. Let's say, all right, a simple sentence correctly. So what are the little steps that in order to form a simple sentence? Okay. So the little goals that the students, the pupils can reach is, okay, they can they have to identify. For example, one, okay, they are able to use uppercase when they start a sentence and end with a full stop. So these are the little steps that they can go through in order to achieve the main LO. All right. So if you were to say to combine, there are two different things actually.
Yes.
Ms. Freida, do you want to add?
Okay, may I add also?
Yes, please.
Okay, on top of what Ms. Vilo and Ms. Lim. Yes. Okay, now teachers, not to be confused. Okay, LOs are for teachers, right? LOs are for teachers. In lesson plan, that the LOs are for teachers. Now, SEs are for students. What students need to achieve. So the way we present them also is in a kids-friendly language, okay? It couldn't be like so that's why we use a can-do statement. So the little steps to achieve. So the can-do statements is where you write in your SC for the students to know. LOs is for the teachers to know what is the lesson objective of the day. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I think for the second question is from Miss Lachmi Priya. Can we have more than one success criteria in a lesson? Anyone wants to share the
Okay,
answer
who would like
first?
to answer this?
No.
I'll try.
When you
I'll
have,
give it a go.
Vilo mentioned that, okay, Miss Vilo mentioned that these are the little steps, right? Okay, in order to achieve the learning objectives. So when you write your success criteria, okay, sometimes you have more because these are like what Miss Freida mentioned earlier. Okay, you will state simple steps there, simple with short instructions as little goals for them. For example, based on my example earlier. All right. In order to form a complete, a simple sentence, what are the little goals? Also, I can put there success criteria number one. Okay. Right. Able to use uppercase. Okay. And then, or the second part will be the second goal is able to put a full stop at the end of a sentence. So these are the little goals. So if what you meant is whether you can have a few, so I would say, why not?
Yeah. True.
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, agree with Lim. Because there's no way you cannot there's no way you can achieve the objective with just only one success criteria, which is like little goals to achieve the main one, right? There's a few
Yes.
steps that you have to take, so there'll be more than one. In a normal situation, there'll be more than one success criteria actually.
Yes, because we have to remember success criteria is not for us. Success criteria is more of from the point of view of the students, the learner's point of view. So
Yes.
what they can
View of
do
the
to
student.
achieve the main learning objective of the day.
Yes.
So in writing the success criteria, the teacher is giving step-by-step instructions. So what is the instruction or able to place put a full stop at the end of a sentence. So these are the success criteria in order to achieve the main LO of the day, of the lesson.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I think if you really understand.
May I add?
Yes, Ms.
Yes.
Frida.
Okay, because I saw somebody is still confused with the SC. Okay, now when writing SC, you can simply write as you can write in uppercase. Then you can write in 3 simple sentences. So that's 2 success criteria referring to what the students can do. All right?
So when you tell the students, you tell them, you just ask. Okay. Yes, like what Miss Freida mentioned. When you tell the learners, right? So you just tell them to ask yourself, okay, what can I do? So I can punctuate or I can place a full stop. So remember the can do statement.
Yes.
Okay, all right. CFR uses can do statements to
statements.
describe the learner's language ability.
All right. Okay. I
Right.
think the keyword is
I
you
hope
have
that
to
clears
really,
up the air.
yeah,
Hopefully,
it clears
yeah.
up the air. I think the keyword is you really have to understand the differences between the SC and the LO, so that if you do understand, then you can actually differentiate what to do with which one. Okay. All right. So the attendance link is already in the chat box, so don't forget to key in the attendance. And I think we have come to the end of our webinar for today and for part 1. So thank you to all the presenters and also the team backstage, and of course to our wonderful audience today who have taken the time to join us. And we hope through this seminar, especially for the part 1, you're able to take away a lot of useful information. Don't forget to join us again tomorrow for part 2, same time but with different presenters and different topic for year 5 curriculum. So thank you everyone once again and for joining us. For those who miss any of our webinar, don't worry, you can find this webinar on the JPS YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe, share and like the channel. So till then, I'm Syarifah Nazurah signing off. I'll see you again tomorrow. Assalamualaikum and bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Don't
Thank
forget to
you.
join us tomorrow.
See you
Okay.
tomorrow.
Thank
See you.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Have a nice
Bye.
day.
Nice day.